Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to this week's episode of the Small Business Surgeon Podcast. And guys, today we are in for a treat. We are joined by one of the judges from season 10 of the television show The Blox. She is the owner of K-9 Lifeline, and she is the master of all things dog training. So please welcome to the show, Heather Beck. Heather, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I definitely appreciate any chance I get to talk with other entrepreneurs and for other entrepreneurs. So definitely appreciate your time today.
Oh, dude, it's your time, so thank you for being here. And you know I like that you smiled after I read that introduction. The introduction is the only part of the show that I script, so at least get one thing right. So
Fantastic.
so let's start with you, Heather. That was a really brief intro as a judge on the blocks and a master of all things dog training. Let's start with you. Tell us just a little bit about your background and how you got into entrepreneurship.
Okay, yeah, for sure. I literally have never had another job. I've always worked around dogs from the time I moved from Wisconsin out to Utah.
Mhm.
In 1995, I grew up around horses and large animals. When I moved out here for college, that just wasn't an option. So I saw an ad in a local newspaper. If that tells you how long ago that was, I saw an ad in a local newspaper about helping out at an adoption event. And I went to the mall that weekend and helped at an adoption event. And I was hooked. So I started working in shelters and rescues, fostering dogs through my home. Eventually, that transitioned where I opened up my first business, which I bought a retail pet store.
Oh wow.
But I used it as a shelter. So I basically
Hmm.
expanded into the space next door and had kennels. But running as a rescue, I started to realize that that just wasn't gonna make money. I would adopt
Right,
out,
right.
75 dogs a month, and I'd get, a bunch of them returned, and the money you were spending and the emotions involved got really overwhelming.
I
So I
bet,
started to
dude.
transition.
And not even for the dogs too. How do you return a dog? It's like, oh, sorry, it didn't work. Here, take it. Can you imagine how must that feel for the dog? That must be awful,
Yeah,
dude.
it's hard. It's really, really hard. And I did that for a lot of years. And I ran a large breed and pit bull rescue. I originally wanted to do large breed, but every time, I get a call about a Great Dane or a Mastiff at the shelter, I'd go in. And this was long before like pit bull, or big stocky bully type breeds were an
Mm,
issue. And so I would go and be like, well, what's wrong with this dog? Or what's wrong with that dog? And so it just kind of developed that I started taking on some of these dogs that just weren't getting adopted, and just kind of became my niche. But once I realized the emotional toll of working in rescues and shelters and that kind of stuff, I really realized that I was standing at the bottom of the waterfall.
mhm.
And so I found the way to be able to stand at the top, which was training, keeping the dogs in the home in the first place. So as soon as I made that transition, it wasn't overnight, but it definitely,
Right, right.
was a transition. Once I made that transition, there was really no looking back. And I just said, hey, I can't imagine, and I still work with shelters and rescues a lot, but I'm definitely saving a lot more dogs and people,
Hmm.
through what I'm doing now. So K9 Lifeline as a business entity, we're celebrating 22 years now. And then also the other side is that I do have a leash business, a dog product line. So I patented and invented a head collar training leash that's
Hmm.
sold all over the world now, and that blew up during COVID. I was featured on the TV show The Profit with Marcus Lemonis as well.
Oh,
And so
nice.
that
Wow.
actually helped to launch Heather's Heroes. He actually gave me the name of the business at that time. So that was a really great experience. But that's where I'm at now. So I've got multiple businesses that are doing great things for dogs and for humans all over the place.
Wow, that's so much to unpack. Um,
Sorry.
No, no, it's all good because we have listeners at different levels of business. We've got people that have done it all, and we've got people that haven't done a thing yet that are just kind of contemplating dipping their toes in the water. And you've certainly done it all. I want to go back to you being a inexperienced young lady that's interested in fostering dogs and rescuing dogs, and you take that first leap into opening a retail business. What was that like, and how did it go?
Oh, it was terrifying. So basically, I bought into a business that had been running for about 20 years
Hmm.
from the previous owners. So it was I was actually still in college at the time that this
Oh,
happened.
wow.
Yeah, I had wanted to go to vet school, so that's one of the reasons I was in college at the time, because that's, at the time that's the direction. If you want to work with animals, you become a veterinarian. Like, dog training was not a profession the way that it is now. Like,
Right. Yeah.
it really
Mhm.
is a legit profession now. It wasn't that way when I started. So yeah, kind of moving into that, it was really scary, but I was like basically just buying myself somewhere to work, right?
Mhm.
So I bought myself somewhere to work, and looking over like his finances, the guy was on point. Like, he really, looking back at it now, I mean, I knew nothing. I knew nothing, knew absolutely nothing. So it was a big struggle, but in his finances, he had everything really kind of down to the penny, literally, and was making about 2,500 a month. And for me at that time, I was like, man, I could live on this forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is gonna be amazing. Like, I can't believe what it's gonna be like to make that kind of money.
Mhm.
And it was just kind of a dream come true. But as soon as I actually got into the business and started the realization of actually owning a business, running a business, having staff, because I had groomers working there as well, so it was a groomery. And then of course my vision was I wanted to expand into the space next door with my rescue, and I
Right.
did
Right.
that. But yeah, it was terrifying. So I ran that business in that entity for 4 years before I sold it to my groomers,
Mhm.
and then really went into more of the training and growth aspect there. But yeah, it was definitely very eye opening. I learned a lot because like nothing was really online. Like QuickBooks is
Right.
online
Right.
now.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
I'd have to like run the register every night, and then have to
Mhm.
like hand put it into QuickBooks, having to balance a checkbook, having to learn numbers and P&L, and I still sucked at that. Like, I absolutely sucked at that all the
Mhm.
way. I've gotten so good at that kind of stuff, and realizing what an important aspect that is for the business. But it was definitely just kind of getting my MBA in business is probably what I was doing over those 4 years versus doing it through a college scenario.
Right, right. So you you definitely learned a lot. Can you can
Yeah.
you can you go deeper into that and just tell me one or two of the things that that tripped you up that you ran across and what you did to fix them, how you got over those issues?
Oof. Well, I would say probably the first thing was coming in, buying another business and
Hmm.
having employees there, and me coming
How
in.
old were you? What, 19, 20?
Yes. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
18.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's got to be
18,
tough as it
19.
is to come in
Yeah.
and to have people that now you have a position of authority over, but they have perceived seniority. And so, yeah, how did you handle that?
Oh, I didn't do well. I did have one woman that we just butted heads like crazy. Like, she was one of the groomers, and she literally just did things, behind my back, and
Hmm.
would, just really kind of was really conniving with a lot of our clients and things like that.
Right.
So eventually I let her go. But I am really grateful. I did have a groomer there that I just said, hey, I got to figure out, because once you're in there, you realize how much you're going to make grooming. So I'm like, well, if grooming is coming in, I should learn how to groom, because that's 100%, money coming into the business. I'm not having to pay commission out.
Right.
So
Yeah.
look, I was very, very fortunate to have a woman that was in the business as a groomer, and she was willing to teach me. So I came in and became a student of hers, even though I was her boss.
Right.
And I think that was probably one of the biggest lessons to learn, is that I was coming in and I had to, I wasn't really being humbled because I knew nothing.
Mm,
So I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
come in as a boss. I just came in as like, hey, I just want to like help dogs. Like, how do we make this happen? And so
Yeah,
I wasn't coming in with a lot of ego, but I didn't know I didn't know what I was supposed to do at that time either.
yeah, yeah.
So, the lessons learned, I would say, were definitely like, stay humble, be open-minded, and come in as a student, no matter where you are, even going on to, I'm sure we'll talk about the Blox too, but that was my, kind of has been a life mantra for me, is just being a perpetual student. And I think it probably started with that experience, because she taught me a lot. She helped me to, keep the business going under my, what I was doing. And then I eventually sold the business to her.
Right, right.
So it worked out.
Do you know, I didn't realize the thing about being a perpetual student. I didn't realize I was one until I looked around and I realized everybody else wasn't.
Yeah.
Um, I want to underline just how important it is that people realize education doesn't stop at college. It just goes and
No.
goes and goes, man.
Well, and
The
even that, the perpetual mindset too. Like, I think entrepreneurs are definitely a very different breed as far as the way that we think.
I think we're all
Um,
dropped on our head as children. I think
yes, or I
that's
mean,
the
we're
answer.
definitely all struggling from some sort of
Hmm.
mental capacity, and diagnosed or undiagnosed.
Yeah.
But it really is one of those things where you start to realize that, hey, I definitely think differently than some people. Like I would never be happy just having a job
Mm.
and working for somebody else, and I've
They,
never done that.
I had
I think
that.
I had a short stint at like a comedy club or something, but it was like, yeah, this is not going to be for me. And so,
Yeah.
somebody just getting a regular paycheck, I don't know what that's like. I've never had that, good or bad. I've
Yeah.
never had that experience. So,
Yeah. I mean, I did shortly after high school, but not since. And it's funny because, I just had a conversation yesterday with an entrepreneur that I've known since 2008. And he's just like, I'm done. I'm fucking done. I'm done. I'm gonna get a job. He's like, I can live off 100 grand a year. They'll pay my health insurance. They'll pay my taxes. I'm like, yeah, but come on, man, you'd miss out on all the fun.
right. Yeah. See, and I just kind of, I don't think I could ever, well, I know I could never. And not to say that I wouldn't be a good employee, because I've volunteered hundreds upon hundreds of hours, whether it's in
Mhm.
shelter work, rescue. I worked at a summer camp on a ranch. I mean, I've put in a lot of time working
Right.
for other people, but not in like a paid position. But I do know that I constantly am striving to do something different, create something different, make something new, and make changes. So I feel like it's weird when you have the realization that not everybody thinks like that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, we're a very small subset of people. Like I say, probably
Yeah.
dropped on our heads at birth.
Yeah, I'll have to ask my parents, pretty sure.
You can tell there's normally a flat top there in there
Yeah.
somewhere. All right. So you made a pivot when you sold the business and you pivoted into dog training. What was that like at first? Because back then, like you said, I mean, internet's just kind of starting to get going. I'm assuming from the timeline and the way you look, I'm assuming we're in the early 2000s at this point. And so
Yeah.
what was it like trying to make a business out of a business that didn't exist? There really wasn't a market for dog training that you could tap
Yeah.
into and harvest.
Yeah, I mean it was definitely tricky, but I will tell you the good thing is that all of my years in shelters and rescues, I had gotten that reputation for, somebody that did take in more difficult dogs, whether I knew
Hmm.
what I was doing at that time or not, that I was willing to rescue those dogs. So my phone was still ringing through that same line. So when people would call me and try and rehome a dog, like I remember the first call that I got that I was like, this is going to be a training appointment, and they're like,
Right.
oh, we want to rehome our dog. I said, okay, hey, what would you think if I just offered you, I came out and I did a training appointment with you, and we did some work with your dog. And that was the very first appointment I ever did. The dog was super reactive with people. I almost got bit. It didn't go as well as I hoped, but I got that first experience, under my belt. And then it
Right.
just, it
Right.
just literally just flooded from there because I already had a good reputation. So me changing from, and I did get some crap from the rescue world where they're like, well, but we need you. You're the only person who does X, Y, and Z. I was like, well, guess what? I'm going to change. But then once they started to realize that I was helping keep dogs in the home
Hmm.
in the first place, then they started referring me and they started becoming the people that were advocating for me and supporting me. So I feel like I had a pretty good in that type of transition.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say somebody starting off like, oh, I'm just going to be a dog trainer, especially today, it's real hard because they don't have that reputation. I already had the reputation. I
Yeah.
was just
Yeah.
switching, the ways that I was helping dogs and their humans. So it just changed over. So it wasn't too hard of a transition, but it's weird looking back now at how long it took to get to where I am today and like
Hmm.
all of the struggles, like the hours, the days, the tears, because I'm not working with cogs and widgets. I'm working with living,
Yeah.
breathing animals.
Yeah.
Things die,
Oh,
like,
yeah, that's right.
people were not having success, their dogs are having to be euthanized, or I get a call from a client and it got hit by a car before it even got to come in for training because it got out the front door, so it's really a very emotional type of career. So I get, some people come in and they don't last. I've mentored a lot of trainers. It's the other side of what I do. I do a lot of mentoring,
Hmm.
training, shadow programs. So I've trained a lot of other people, but they come in, but not everyone lasts. But it's because of that. It's very emotional, just
Yeah.
emotional.
Yeah, dude, I rescued a dog and I'd had her about 3 years and she got hit by a car in 2008 and I never ever got another dog. It broke my heart.
Yep.
I cried proper grown up tears full of snot and everything and
Well, and
yeah, I couldn't
I feel
imagine
the
doing
same
it,
way. All my
Yeah,
clients' dogs, I feel the exact same way. All thousand million bazillion of them, I feel they're my dogs.
right, right.
They're my dogs. So when they're involved in our business and with what we do, I mean, that's just they're just part of our family and part of our life. So the emotional side of this type of industry, not just the emotional roller coaster of being an entrepreneur in general, but you add in, living, breathing things, and it just takes it to a whole nother level of burnout.
Well, yeah, and the only constant you've got is that every client's a variable. None of them are
Right.
consistent.
Yeah.
They can all be different. That's
Yes.
yeah, that's crazy. So, tell me a little bit like about how you run the business nowadays, because you've got quite a large presence. You've got your online stuff, you've got everything going on with all your staff, and then you've got, guest television show appearances. So,
That's right. Yeah, yeah. I've been on a couple TV shows, so it's been entertaining. Yeah, I mean, basically, I've done the best that I can to actually give a lot of my staff a lot of autonomy,
mhm,
which also gives myself autonomy. So I'm kind of living the dream as far as entrepreneurs. So, it only took 22 years to get there, to the point where, you go, okay, well, hey, the business can run, but I will say
mhm,
that is more dependent on the person running the business than it is on the business.
yeah,
Because if you're not willing to stop micromanaging, if you're not willing to trust people around you, if you're not willing to build a team where
mhm,
nobody can tell who's in charge, that's that's going to be a challenge. You're never going to get to that point of freedom. And I mentor my students all the time, talking to them about, hey, hire somebody to answer phones and emails. Oh,
mhm,
but nobody could possibly schedule anything. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like, you need help. But it took me a long time to get to that point. So,
mhm.
and
I
it does allow me a lot of freedom. And I'll say, when I was on the blocks, I think I was one of the only judges besides maybe Jonathan Fudge, good old Judge Fudge, but that wasn't constantly working during the
Right,
filming,
right,
where
right.
and honestly it's like, hey, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna be gone. I can take off 3 months in the summer when my kids are out of school. And but it took a while to be able to do that, and it takes a little bit of letting go and a lot of trust, and having faith in the people around you.
It's funny that, we're in our 40s and we understand that. I mean,
Yeah.
it took me 24 years
Hmm.
of being in business and making mistakes, and nobody can do this as well as I can, and
Which is
working on
total myth.
vacations.
That's the
Yeah,
myth. I mean,
yeah,
that's the total
yeah.
entrepreneurial myth right there is, hey,
Hmm.
yeah, guess what? People can do it better than you can. They can do it better than
Yes,
you can. Like,
yes.
don't stop fooling yourself. Like, the
Just
people around you will do it better. And I say that about pretty much every single one of my staff. Like, they're better with dogs. They're
hmm.
better with, all of our systems. They're better at training other people. Yeah, I'm really good at a lot of things, but I want the people around me to be better at the things that I do. It just
Exactly.
makes it
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, I try to be good at everything we do, and then
Yeah.
I hire great people for all the positions. And then
Yeah.
I got a good understanding of what's going on. I've got a good operational knowledge, but they're great at it. They skate through it
Yeah.
while I plow through it. And so
Yep.
in that vein and in the spirit of learning that lesson, because hiring your first person, especially as a young entrepreneur, so after you were out, go on. After you were out as a dog trainer, right? So you're out on your own. The shop's gone. The groomers are grooming that. They bought it. What was your first hire like? How scary was it? And what was that process like?
Oh, it was really scary. But this, yeah, this became basically my entire life though, because my first hire was a young girl. She's great. We're still actually friends today. She's
Hmm.
got her own family. They don't live near me, but we're still in contact. But that was my first hire, and it was scary because now, man, things got real. Like, what are we doing? Like, how are we doing this? And it
Yeah,
was, I mean,
yeah,
it was a pet store, and then also the rescue. So I mean, it's like, okay, cleaning fish tanks, feeding the birds, making sure we're doing inventory.
right.
But it
And
was scary.
yeah, but like, how much were you paying that first hire?
Mm. It couldn't have been a lot. Geez, I want to say. maybe 8 something an hour
Okay, so
if I think about it.
let's
Yeah.
round up and let's call cleaning the fish tanks $10 an hour task.
Yeah.
What makes me cry and what pains me is watching entrepreneurs
Do those
spend
jobs.
they're worth $1,000 an hour when they focus on their company and
Yep.
but it took me years to understand that putting in the $10 guy freed me up to work on the $20 tasks, and
Yeah.
putting in the $20 guy freed me up to work on the $50 tasks.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and it is really handcuffing for people to think that way, and I lived that for a long time, and the unfortunate thing too is that we buy, as entrepreneurs, we get into the business because it's what we like to do. Like
yeah.
if I were actually wanted to be a business owner, or an actual real entrepreneur, I would have bought a business that I had nothing interested to do about it.
Mm,
Like instead of buying myself a job, because that puts us into the taskmaster role.
correct. Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
you're just there. I'm doing the training, I'm cleaning the kennels, I'm mopping the floors, I'm doing
Hmm.
all that. And at the beginning, you have to wear a lot of hats,
Yeah.
but as soon as you have to make that first hire. You have to make, have somebody around you. Like that's our job, is to hire people. Entrepreneurs
Yes.
are the ones who create jobs. So if we're
Yes.
not doing that, we're literally being very selfish, in my opinion. Like you're just being very selfish.
You're
Even as
so
a
right.
solo
Yeah.
entrepreneur, you
Hmm.
can outsource stuff like, hey, bookkeeping, phones, emails, virtual assistants, like hire people to help you so that you can do the things that you're really good at.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. It's just it's so difficult because most people see it as an expense because it is. You look at a $10 an hour person, I got taxes on that, I got $500 a week to find, right?
Yeah.
But they fail to see I just bought 40 hours of my time.
It's a
I could,
huge return on investment.
yeah, could,
Huge. Yeah, where I find a lot of people really struggle, and I also struggled with this, is I just had a conversation with somebody, but this is so common with anybody I talk to, and I obviously relate, you probably will too. The guilt that goes along with when you are no longer in the doing position
mhm.
and you're starting to like step out, and you're doing other things, like the guilt of, well, I need to be there with my team, or I have to master it before I teach them, or that guilt is very real, and
100%. Yeah.
it'll suck you back in 1,000 times over. So to create separation for me is I really had to not put myself back into those positions. Having a lot of layers of people where it's like, oh, something happens with this person, I'm not the first one to jump back in to go clean kennels or, walk dogs and stuff. Like
Right, right, right.
I'm not that first person, but that guilt, it has to have a name. It's got to have a name. Like I know, like entrepreneurial guilt, but it's got to be like, like some morphed term of something, of just that guilt that you feel when you aren't doing the same things that kind of those entry level positions are doing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like to build that team, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I owned a car dealership for several years, and
Mm-hmm.
I would find myself, I'm running a dealership, I've got all kinds of stuff going on, and yet I would find myself picking up the broom and going and sweeping up the shop just out of sympathy with the guys that were in the shop because I wanted to relate to them and be like,
Yep.
but really I should have just paid somebody to go sweep the shop. But
Yep. And honestly, I do this all the time. My staff know this, but like one of my favorite things to do is like to go out into the social rooms and like mop and clean up, because I actually find peace in that, because it just reminds me of a lot of the days and the times that I had to do it, 24/7, 7 days a
right,
week. But
right.
and I enjoy, hanging out and being around my staff, but I never feel like I'm obligated to have to go back to doing those tasks, which I think is very different. I get to jump in because I enjoy it. I don't have to jump
Yes.
in because I'm handcuffed
Yes.
to it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's like the construction projects I do. My job on construction projects is to hire a project manager and write the checks. But,
Mhm.
sometimes I was raised in construction. I did apprenticeships in it, and sometimes I like to go hang sheetrock. But
Yep.
by the end of the day, I don't want to hang it again tomorrow. I'm quite good. I'm
No,
good, thanks.
I
Yeah,
feel that. I feel like anything, if it's a physical kind of service job, like you better figure out a way for somebody younger, dumber, to come in and kind of fill your shoes a bit, because you can't do it all. Like you
yeah,
can't, like in my industry, I mean, it's, I had a mentor that passed away, and he, had dogs in for training up until the day that he passed away. And it was like, man, and he always was like that solo entrepreneur, him and his wife. And
Yeah.
I look at that and I'm like, man, I know that works great for some people, but I want to have some freedom. I want to have, my existence and my family. And this has been the best path. And I hope that it's a path that other people strive for,
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
just
for
think like, hey,
sure.
you don't have to work. Well, you should work hard. You should work hard at the beginning because you can't get around. There's no quick fix to this. There just isn't. But once you put in that time and effort, you got to start to recognize where you can start to make some of those changes and adjustments to give yourself more freedom. That's what I think the goal is to have a little more freedom.
Absolutely. Look, I want to ask you though about hiring people,
Sure.
because it really is critical to put people underneath you in such a way that they're making money, they're enjoying life, they're reaching their goals.
Hmm.
When you hire people, what are some of the traits you look for? What are some of the core values that run through your company that you would? Oh, wait, she's laughing at me now.
Yeah.
Um,
So we actually have our core values. So our
Wonderful.
business,
Let's do it.
yeah,
Let's do it.
does have our core values. So I don't know if you're gonna be able to
Go
see
for
that 'cause
it.
it's probably a little
I
backwards,
see
but
that. Yeah.
they're super
But
cute. Um, so we literally hire and fire based 100% on our core values.
dude, I like you more and more. Like this, if you're, this is the way. This is the
Yes.
way, people. Goodness
Yeah, and
me.
it literally is like it just kind of gives you it gives you grounding to where
Hmm.
you are. And when people step out of line, you can say, hey, this is, do you feel that this kind of fell in line with the core values? Because then it's not on you, it's not personal, as you're like having to deal with maybe a disciplinary action or something like that, or
Hmm.
even hiring. I mean, if we hire somebody, but they're one of their core values. So one of ours is reason. So we believe in providing a safe environment where our staff can thrive and feel a sense of reason and belonging. So if they come in and they just want a job and they just want a paycheck, we already know that they're going to struggle here. We've got 30 people on our team. Everyone's very eclectic. Everybody's very um, involved, and empathetic. And we are, make sure that we're here because of the reason that we're here is we're here for the dogs and the dogs' well-being. So if you come in and you don't have that mentality, if I
Hmm.
hire that person, it's going to be an epic failure for them and it's going to be an epic failure for us. So we
Yeah.
definitely feel
Yeah, for
very
sure.
strongly about going along with our core values, hiring and firing.
That it's the only way. Just the other day, I have people hit me up for work all the time, and I met with a guy in an outdoor patio, and things were going well, and then right at the end, he stubbed out his cigarette on the wall and left it on the top of the wall. And so he never got an offer. Like that was it. Like if you would do
Yeah,
that to somebody else's business, what would you do to
no,
my business? And
yeah,
not stubbing out cigarettes isn't one of my core values, but it might just become one after that.
yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense because even like, and we did this not too long ago, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, as we started basically implementing our kind of our core values, but also with our clients and the people that we were bringing into our business, which I know as a starting entrepreneur, you are just taking anything, like you just
Yeah.
want that money. You got to take that in, you got to do that. And like where we're at in my business, and you don't have to be in business a long time to do this if you want to not burn out. And
Hmm.
so we started kind of doing these like kind of like crush cringe analyses of our, what I'm talking
Yeah.
about, like
Yeah.
that cringe
Yeah.
client, like that their phone number comes up on your phone and you're like, you don't want to answer,
Hmm.
and we did it for the clients and for the dogs, like, hey, and I am very mama bear with my staff too. So if a client is being really unreasonable with my staff and they're just not being
Hmm.
able for us to deal with, like we just won't let them make a reservation again.
Yeah.
Like we bring them in for an assessment. And the dogs, we've never turned a dog away ever at our facility. So I specialize in difficult, reactive, and socializing these kind of dogs together. But when we bring a dog in and we've got, oh man, the dog is awful in the kennel, the dog is wanting to bite, which we can still deal, we can handle dogs that want to bite, we can handle everything here. um, and then you've got a client who's kind of a jerk too. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
this is not our ideal client. And we started doing this because we were having to put our really VIP, like crush
Hmm.
clients, crush
Hmm.
client, crush dog on weight because we were filling up with some of these jerks. So we kind of went through and we literally kind of filtered out some of the clients that we just didn't want to work with anymore and either stop making reservations or we just straight told them, hey, we just don't think we're a good fit for you.
That is
And
such an important lesson.
yeah, and it's been great. I mean, and now everybody who comes in, they appreciate us, they appreciate us. They are as much involved in our core values or fit in line with our core values, whether they know it or not. Um, that's just the way that it goes. So we've
I
got just such a happy environment now.
I really hope you guys are paying attention to what Heather is saying here. When you first start out in business, and let's use I don't know, let's use real estate as an example, because I did build a quite large real estate company back in the day. When you first start out in business, well, you say, who's your ideal client? Ooh, anyone that wants to buy and sell a house. But it really isn't, because you can end up with some absolute doozies of clients that you don't want to deal with. And my world didn't change till I sat down and I defined my ideal client. And once I
Mhm.
understood how to define my ideal client, it's the same with the small business surgeon. Once I had that down and I defined it, you let go of everything else. And it's
Yeah,
terrifying to let go. But what happens
yeah,
is you filter through the people that are coming into your business. They're happier to see you. They're happy to pay for your services. They're happy to pay a premium for good quality and service. And everything starts to get better because you're not surrounded by negativity, by bad clients, and frankly, by arseholes. And, if I wanted to be surrounded by arseholes all day, I'd be a proctologist, wouldn't I?
exactly. Good point. Good point. And I would say too, I mean, even for me on the outside, like as a consumer myself and somebody who, works with other businesses or works with other people, I mean, I see that in myself too, like how it helped me to reevaluate, like,
Hmm.
hey, do they see me as a cringe client? Like, am I, you know what I mean? Like, where I'm like, I don't want to
you're
be that client. Like, I
you're
want to
a
be that, I
villain
want
in
to be the
someone's
crush.
story. There's a story
Yeah.
where you're a villain. I mean,
Oh, I
that's just
guarantee. And
inescapable. You know,
no, and I've always kind of had, hit and miss opportunities sometimes, but yeah, I mean, it just kind of you just kind of wonder like, hey, is this, am I their cringe client? But I always try and be realistic, and like, hey, how am I in this relationship, or am I a
yeah,
good fit, or maybe I'm not a good fit, and
right,
I'm
right.
I'm realistic about that too, like, hey, if somebody comes and they want to train with me, hey, I'm going to offer what I teach and what I do and how I do it, but
Hmm.
we might not be a good fit and you might not like
Right.
me and you might not like what I do. And
Hmm.
I'd say I've gotten a lot softer over the last probably 10 years because I'm
Right.
very straightforward. I'm very, very straightforward
Mhm.
and stupid honest sometimes, which is not for the well-being of some people. You know what I mean? Like where I would say just dumb things and just hurt people. And I'm not proud of that, but it's as you get older, you just I don't know. I hope you get smarter as you get older. I feel like I am, but who knows?
It might just be a case of, the give a fuck gauge just starting to go down ever so
Yeah, that's
slightly as you
right.
get
That's
older,
right.
it's to get
I mean, you get
fewer
into
and
the,
fewer.
halfway through your life, you got to make some choices, right? Like, which direction am I going to go?
Yeah, I know, but like I just want to reaffirm how good it can get when you fire clients that aren't a good fit.
Oh
Like,
man, it's so relieving. Like, it's like a weight off your shoulders. Like every time
mhm,
they call and they want to book. I had one client, and we were so worried about the backlash. Like, we were super terrified about the backlash. Like, we're going to get all these negative reviews, blah blah blah. And
mhm,
the thing is we're one of the only facilities that can literally board a lot of the dogs that we were kind of cutting loose. There
right.
weren't we really didn't have options for them. And after we let some clients go, and we had a lot of them try and come crawling back to us, which was really sad because we do it for the dogs.
Yeah,
We do it for
yeah,
the
for sure.
dogs, but and so it was really hard to just say, hey, we just can't, like we know you're going to fall back into these habits. We know that, this dog is not the best fit here. Maybe you'll be happy somewhere else. And obviously we couldn't make you happy because we were trying, like we were literally trying our best. And if you can't appreciate what we do here, wait until you see some of the other locations or some of the other facilities around here and you're going to come crawling back and go, wow, I didn't know what I had.
Right,
It's like
right.
we break up with them and then they just want us back.
Well, just in a very kind way, like it's okay to say, look, if you feel that you can get this service and this value somewhere else for another price, please go and get it. because
Yep.
I know what it costs me to produce this. I know, what my profit margin is. I know where I'm making or losing money. And
Yeah.
if you want to go try and get it somewhere else, please be my guest. And the majority of the time, if you're doing your job right, they won't be able to do that, you know?
Yeah, and they haven't, and even these last 5 years, like as an entrepreneur has been, and I've been in business. I was in business in 2018,
Hmm.
so I know what it's like to have like really kind of crazy stuff going on. But God damn, these last 5 years have been insane. And so, when, things are up, things are down, things are, we go from 150 dogs one day to three,
Wow.
overnight during COVID. And it was
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, like, and everybody had some sort of like trauma, as an entrepreneur,
Oh
you
God. Yeah.
know, but these last 5 years have been absolutely insane. So, I mean, as we started to recognize like, hey, we really want to focus on the good. We really want to focus on providing people that appreciate us good service, and also just be doing what feels right for us. I don't have to keep groveling, for the next paycheck to pay my
Right.
rent or my
Right.
mortgage. It's like we're just in a better place, but we're in a better place because we've made those decisions, not in spite of them.
Yeah, yeah. Even though when you make them, they can be quite challenging to go ahead and make and stand firm on, you know?
Yeah, raising prices, that's always really scary. Like that's hard. That's hard.
I like that though, because like, I talk to my barber a lot. She's wonderful. She does a great job, and she was terrified to raise her prices. And I kind of wish I hadn't told her this now because she did. She raised her prices by a lot. And but she's worried about her clientele. Right? So, if you lose 50% of your clientele, but you've raised your prices by 50%, then you're fine.
Well,
Like,
and then you're
and
just less burnt out trying to keep up with
fewer
all of
hours,
them.
same, and then you've got all these spots open for new clientele at the new price. So there's
Yeah.
really, there's very, very little risk in raising your prices if your value and your service are as good as you think they are, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that it's just like I said, over these last 5 years, I mean, that's been a huge challenge as far as keeping costs, where they can be. Also for us, we were giving really big pay raises, and
Hmm.
increasing just everybody's overall pay. We offer benefits, which we'd always done, but I mean, we were trying to keep up with Taco Bell hiring up the street, and I'm just
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I
yeah.
can't afford that. Like I cannot afford that. And it just got really hard. Like hiring in this last couple of years has gotten definitely tricky, but it's, we're navigating it. I feel like hopefully things are going to kind of start normalizing out again, but I don't even try and guess what normal is, and nothing
No,
surprises me.
I quit.
Nothing
Yeah.
surprises me. Nothing.
There's no normal. There's just
No.
today, and then there'll be
Yep.
tomorrow, and we'll see what
Yes.
happens, you know?
Yes. We're on the same page with that. It's like, yeah, okay. Like there's nothing that I'm like, oh my gosh, anymore. Ever. Never happens.
It's
Like,
it's that, it's that needle. It's that needle.
yeah.
It's run out.
Yeah.
It's
It's
run
like,
out.
didn't see that coming, but not shocked.
Yeah. All right. Man, I'm having fun, Heather. Or on the show, but if I did, it would be to tell you about the systems and processes I use for running businesses online, which you can find in our Facebook group over at FollowSam.Live. All right, back to the interview. Let's keep going. Let's talk about the Blox for a little bit. Like, how did you
Yes.
first hear about that, and how did you get involved in the whole thing?
Oh, okay. So this is kind of a fun story. So I actually was giving a presentation at the International Association of Canine Professionals. I was the keynote speaker this last September.
Oh, wow.
So in April, I decided that I wanted my topic to be, so this is all dog professionals, bunch of dog professionals. And I wanted my topic to be mastering the balance between ego and vulnerability.
Okay.
So deep topic, right? I would rather have talked about dogs. But so what I realized what I had to do is like, hey, I really need to start practicing being more vulnerable, because when you're in this a long time, you really do start to build a lot of walls. You start to, it's just hard. Like you have more friends that work for you. Like I don't have a lot of friends that don't get a paycheck
Hmm.
from me,
Right,
because
right.
this is where I am all the time. And
Hmm.
so, you kind of become very guarded. And I just got really tired of myself being that way. So I kind of use this as an accountability way to do that. So one of the things that I did is literally the ad came up looking for judges and contestants. And I was like, I would not be a contestant. I will not be a contestant, but I'd be happy to be a judge.
Why
So
would you not be a contestant? What?
well, because I was just on the Prophet too. So I was just on the Prophet with Marcus Lemonis, and that was
Oh, okay.
5 months of filming
Oh,
and
wow.
just going through the ringer, like just being, I mean, going through the ringer. So it was, it was a fantastic experience. I learned so much. I'm super grateful. Marcus is still an idol as he was before filming.
Mhm.
But I just kind of, I was like, it'd be really cool to be a judge because I already know that I'm really good at mentoring. I know that I'm really good at helping people out. And also, I really wanted to challenge myself outside of my industry, because
Right.
obviously it's not just all dog people. I'm like, yeah, but I feel like what I know and what I teach and what I've learned has really is transcended among a bunch of different industries. And that proved pretty well. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I just saw the ad and I applied and got a response pretty quickly. And I didn't know anything about the show. I had never even seen an episode. I still, I kind of like checked it out a little bit. I was like, oh, this looks kind of cool. I
Yeah.
didn't know who Wes was.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I just kind of,
Same. All the
yeah,
same.
I
I
had
had
no
no
clue.
idea.
So I showed up. I was one of the last ones to get there, and I literally rolled my bag in, and then we were right pretty much on the stage for
Oh,
the
wow.
first scene. So I was like wheeled right in like 6 o'clock. By like 6:15, we were doing judge introductions. And that's when I was like, oh yeah, I do remember that guy. Yeah, he was the real jerk on Real World. That's right. And so it was, yeah, so that was my experience. But I had a great week. Um, I really met a lot of great people. It's a cool community. So it was exhausting though, because I really took it pretty seriously, like how much this
Yeah.
could impact
Yeah.
the people. And as a judge, it's a lot because you're trying to, help every person in so many different phases of business and where they are. So but I took it very seriously, I was, except for the last night. Then I went bonkers, but I was in bed early. I wasn't drinking a lot. I made some really great connections, but it was a really great experience. So
I loved it. And I hated it. It was
tell
awful.
me, tell me, I got to hear the details.
Well,
What
you say, yeah,
what
like
happened?
put through the, you were put through the ringer for 5 months. We were put through the ringer for 6 days.
Yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
like, put yourself in my shoes, right?
Oh, I did every day. I was like, damn, this would be really hard. And I sat,
Hmm.
just so you know, I sat through every lesson. Like I was
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
above
Yeah.
that. Like I sat in the back, I took notes. Because I wanted to make sure that I knew exactly what the contestants were
Hmm.
learning and what
Yeah.
was going on. And also during that time, because we would get everybody's information the night before. So at 11 o'clock, we would know who was going to be in our pod the
Hmm.
next day. So
Yeah.
what I would start doing, and people love this on my season, what I started doing is I would go through their websites. I would look up their social media. I would, you know what I mean? Like just to get to know
Right.
them, but
Yeah.
also just to see like, hey, what's your presence or what's something that I could help you with that has to do with especially this particular topic of the day. But man, it was really intense, and I am so grateful that I was a judge and not a contestant. So,
Yeah.
so I did
Yeah.
put myself in everybody's shoes every single day, and I tried to be as helpful as I could.
I've known a lot about business. I've been in business a long time, and I've been to a lot of trainings, a lot of events, and that was probably one of the best syllabuses that I've ever been put in front of.
Yeah, agreed.
Obviously, there's a lot in there that both of us are aware of, but there was a lot in there that filled out a lot of blanks and a lot of knowledge gaps in my tree of knowledge. So I found it incredibly useful. But like, put yourself in my shoes, right? Call yourself the small business surgeon. Say you're good at small business stuff. Like,
Yeah,
have a podcast with 50,000 odd freaking
yeah,
people downloading it, and then go and compete on television to prove you who you say. Imagine the
right.
stress of that. It was
No, I get it. And
I
and this is
hated it.
where it comes down to, like that vulnerability, right? Of saying, okay, yeah, I've been doing this a long time. And
Hmm.
sometimes it is that gap of like, hey, we are gonna struggle to put ourselves back into the student position. And
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what happened with you, is like you're coming in and plus there's so many
It,
variations of,
it wasn't
people
so
that
much that. It was like I was terrified to lose. Like, for real, you call yourself the small business surgeon, you're going to go and
right?
stand in a room, and
You
there's
better
nothing.
win.
You can't
Yeah,
lose. You have to win.
do
Like
it.
the pressure was ridiculous. I hated every second of it. There were nights where I didn't sleep. There were days where I
Yep,
didn't eat. It was awful. And I had no idea. They warned us in the email that this would be like a really grueling week and really hard
yeah,
work. And I'm like, well, how hard can it be? And so I was doing a post grad at the time. And so in the
yeah.
mornings
Oh
I would be
man.
working. The mornings I'm working on my post grad, and then the bell rings at what 10:30 or so, and I
Yep,
shut
yep.
my computer and I'm straight into the Blox all day, and then straight into school in the morning again. It was like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
knew it was gonna be intense. Like I already knew that. That's why, like from day one, I'm like, oh, I'm going to bed. I'm not doing it because I know like those long kind of days and like how mentally and it's just very, very draining. So I knew it was gonna be intense. And I was really worried that I wasn't gonna be able to like keep up. But I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, it really is a good thing. And honestly, it just makes me think a lot more like you do not have to go to college to create something amazing. Like you don't have to go
yeah,
to
yeah.
college. Like you know, there's so much that you can learn out there. And not to say don't listen to me, everyone, and don't not go to college, but just know that there's a lot of opportunity out there, that's
Yeah.
available. And the Blox is a good one. I mean, that's
Oh,
a
it's
huge resource. I mean, there's so
wonderful.
much
Yeah.
to learn, so much to
As I
learn.
say, you don't have to go to college, but you do have to be a student.
Yes,
And
yes,
like I love being a lifelong student. There's always something I can
yes.
go and get better at and something I can
Yeah,
learn.
yeah. So good for you, man. So you ended up having a good outcome as far as like being on and
Well,
being there and
yeah. I mean, we got plenty of camera time, and I wouldn't have gone. It was actually my partner Nina, who's spent time in television and film. She pushed me. She's like, "Hey, I've signed you up for this. You need to go fill out this form." And I ignored it for weeks. And then she's like, "Hey, that's deadline is today. You need to fill that thing out." I'm like, "All right, whatever. Leave me alone." And I filled it out, and sure enough, like 2 days later, I get a call. And I was like,
yep.
this has to be a joke. Like, this has to be like a prank. But no, there we were. I think I got an email first, actually. But anyway, the point being, yes, it was a fantastic experience.
I love that.
But while it was happening, I hated every minute of it. It was awful. Um,
Yeah, it's intense, man.
I,
It's definitely intense.
yeah, I'd highly recommend that people sign up and do the show and do the course and do the training. I'd highly recommend becoming a part of the Blox group, the Blox network. I would, but when you go there, like fucking pack a lunch, roll up your sleeves, and know it's going to be horrible. It's going to be awful. It's
It
going to be
is. It's
absolutely
gonna be awful,
awful.
but it'll be done soon. Like, and then hopefully you
Yeah.
look back on it, like with some admiration, and the
Yes.
community around it though too. I mean that, I am
And
working with a lot of people like
yeah.
in the community. Like that's the first place I go when I need something. Like, hey, I need
Yeah.
somebody to help with doing this or setting up that, or who knows something about this. So it's a
Yeah.
great resource even just for that. I wish I had a
Absolutely.
little more time to be more involved, because some people I know they're just living and breathing, the Blox. But I'm very happy to be just a part of that community because it's really inspiring and a lot of positivity. So I feel like entrepreneurs need that because it is lonely.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can't talk to your employees about things. You can't
Hmm.
talk to even your significant other. They just don't understand. But
They
when
don't
you
get
bring
it.
somebody
Yeah.
together that's an entrepreneur, I mean, that's just a very common thread that everybody can get behind and support each other through.
Yes, yeah, and then it's probably the reason that my significant other, was an entrepreneur and is now a part of. We have a business together. It's like we both know just how difficult it is and how hard it is to make stuff work. But all right,
Yeah.
Heather, I don't want this interview to end, but I know we're coming up on time. I for one am on a hard stop today. So before we go, right, I
Yeah.
ask all of my guests this one question. And bearing in mind the show is aimed at guys that are a few years behind us that are coming up that are trying to
Yeah.
get a little value out of here. If you could go back to the beginning when you were coming out of your retail store and going into grooming and going out on your own, going into training, sorry, going out on
Mhm.
your own, what's one piece of advice that you today would give Heather from back then?
Oof, man. I should have warmed up for this one. Um,
My bad.
I probably the one piece of advice would be just give yourself some grace.
Mm,
Um, because it's hard, it's very hard and you're
yeah.
not gonna be perfect. You're gonna make a lot of mistakes. And and use that to your advantage. Like, know that those failures are going to become your successes, and that, but don't be so hard on yourself.
Yes. Wow, that's wonderful. A little bit of grace goes a long way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can definitely attest to being too hard on yourself as a
Yeah.
trainee entrepreneur. So, man, it has been an absolute blast, Heather. Before I let you go, tell me and tell the audience listening at home where we can find you online and where we can follow along with you.
The best place to find me online, you can definitely find me on Facebook, Instagram, Heather Beck or Heather Beck K9. On those ones, I'm also on TikTok, Heather Beck K9. I have a lot of big animals, so I have camels, Texas Longhorns. So
Oh,
you're gonna
wow.
get a lot of that, like a lot of that content,
We
because
like
I talk
that. We
about,
like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I talk about dogs all the time. But you can also find me on my websites, heathersheroes.com and K9 Lifeline, the letter K, the number 9 Lifeline .dog.
Oh, I
So
love
come check
that.
me out.
A dog. Now, I'm gonna slide an extra question in here.
Sure.
Can you train a camel to play fetch?
I haven't yet, but I'm fairly sure it's possible because they're smarter than dogs. So
No
they're
kidding.
just as sweet. So
Oh, I like that. I like that answer. Heather, it has been absolutely wonderful hanging out with you for the last hour. Thank you
thank
so
you. You
much
too. I
for coming
appreciate it.
on. And man, I wish you all the best in the future. Stick around. I'll talk to you again just here in a second after we cut the show. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. That was Heather Beck, the owner of K9 Lifeline, a master of all things dog training and judge on season 10 of the Blox. And if you loved her content as much as I did, please run on over to her socials and show her some love. All right, that's going to do it from us for today. You'll be good, stay safe, and I will see you this Friday for Friday Fire. Bye. All right, guys, that's going to do it for the show for today. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed the conversation that we've had and you want to learn a little bit more about the systems and processes involved in running businesses online, join our Facebook group over at FollowSam.Live. All right, that's it from me for today. You'll be good, stay safe, and I'll see you next week.